Let me start with the most shocking statement I've ever said on this channel. Doctor Who isn't dying, it's already dead. Or at least, the version of Doctor Who you thought you knew. And the person holding the knife, the one writing the obituary while also grinning behind the typewriter, that's none other than Russell T Davies. Wait, the man who saved the show in 2005, the man who gave us Christopher Eccleston's Ninth Doctor, David Tennant's 10th, The Rise of Rose Tyler, Martha Jones, Donna Noble, the man who made The Impossible Planet, Doomsday, Journey's End, that guy, yes, him. And here's the paradox: Russell T Davies might just be remembered not as the savior of Doctor Who, but as the man who killed it. That sounds insane, right? But look around you. Look at the fandom right now. People aren't debating new monsters or cliffhangers. They're debating contracts. They're arguing over Disney's involvement. They're panicking about streaming deals, about missing spin-offs, about whether season 16 even exists. And who's the one in the middle of this chaos, dropping cryptic one? Word replies like, behave, while the house is on fire? Russell T Davies. But let's pull this apart carefully, because the deeper you go, the stranger it gets. And the legacy of RTD2, the second Davies era, might be the most cursed timeline Doctor Who has ever entered. Imagine this, it's 2005 again. You're sitting down on a Saturday night, maybe with chips, maybe with friends, and suddenly you see a leather-jacketed man grab Rose Tyler's hand and say, run. That was the rebirth of Doctor Who. That was Russell T Davies giving life back to a corpse the BBC had left for dead in the 90s. Now imagine this, it's 2025, and the exact same man is being accused of killing the show. That's the loop. That's the irony. That's the forbidden secret. Nobody wants to say out loud the savior has become the executioner. But how? Why? What went so wrong that the greatest revivalist of the show might go down in history as the one who wrote its death sentence? Let's be real here. Russell came back in 2023 with firepower, Disney money, a global platform. In Cutie Gatois as the new Doctor, the promise of spin-offs, a cinematic feel, Billie Piper back in play. It was hyped as Doctor Who, but bigger, better global. And yet here we are 2 years later, and what do we have? A regeneration that nobody asked for, with Ncuti Gatwa splitting into Billie Piper. A Doctor Who that looks more like Marvel than BBC Saturday drama. Spin-offs teased, announced, and then disappearing like ghosts. Ratings that can't hold against even soap operas. And worst of all, a fandom split straight down the middle. Russell wanted to give us a multiverse. Instead, he gave us a multi-shambles. And here's where it gets darker. Because when you zoom out, you start to realize maybe this was always his plan. What if Russell doesn't want to be remembered as the man who saved Doctor Who? What if he wants to be remembered as the man who ended it on his terms? Think about it. He already wrote the perfect goodbye in 2010. The end of time was a curtain call so dramatic, so tearful, it practically begged to be the final Doctor Who story. Tennant whispering, I don't want to go. Wilf knocking 4 times, golly free falling. The end. But the show kept going. It stumbled. It soared. It collapsed again. And now, it's back in his hands. So maybe RTD doesn't see this as a second revival. Maybe he sees it as an execution. Maybe he's building toward one final crescendo, one definitive ending that buries the show for good, so that nobody else can ruin it, so that his name is forever etched in history as the alpha and the omega of Doctor Who. It's terrifying, it's controversial, it might even be true. Quick question for you. If Russell Davies did decide to end Doctor Who once and for all, would you respect him for it? Or would you hate him forever? Comment below. I want to see the split. And be honest, would you rather see Doctor Who go out with a bang under RTD, or limp along endlessly until it collapses under someone else? And hey, if you've made it this far into the video, you're clearly a real fan. So hit that subscribe button right now, because this channel is the only place digging this deep, uncovering the secrets, the forbidden knowledge, the stuff they don't want you talking about. And here's the haunting thought I want to leave you with at the end of this first section. If Doctor Who does die in the next few years, then Russell T Davies' name won't be remembered as the man who saved it. It will be remembered as the man who killed it. And maybe, just maybe, that's the legacy he actually wanted. Here's the question nobody at the BBC wants to answer. Was Russell T Davies ever really in control of this new era? Or was he just the middleman between Disney's money and the BBC's panic? Because when you strip away the flashy regeneration effects, the glossy trailers, the multiverse promises, what are you left with? A show that doesn't know what it wants to be. And that, right there, is the heart of the backlash. Let's rewind. Back in 2022, when it was first announced that Disney Claw would be the international home of Doctor Who, it sounded like a dream. A billion-dollar company backing the BBC's biggest sci-fi property. Global reach. The resources to compete with Star Wars, Marvel, Stranger Things. But then reality hit. Disney doesn't partner. It consumes. It doesn't collaborate. It dictates. Suddenly, Doctor Who was being packaged, branded, marketed as if it were the next Marvel property. You could feel it in the editing. You could see it in the CGI heavyset pieces. You could hear it in the dialogue that felt like it was written with focus groups, not fans. And here's the kicker, when Disney wasn't happy with the numbers, they started to pull back, slowly, quietly. First, the marketing waned. Then, the spin-off chatter went silent. And now, nobody knows if the Disney deal even survives into season 16. So what happens if Disney walks away? Russell T Davies is left holding the bag. And instead of being remembered as the man who brought Doctor Who to Hollywood, he'll be remembered as the man who sold it out. And here's where it gets brutal. Because Doctor Who fans aren't just unhappy, they're angry. The regeneration controversy. When Ncuti Gatwa split into Billie Piper, fandom exploded. Half thought it was revolutionary, half thought it was sacrilege. But almost everyone agreed on one thing: it made no sense. It wasn't earned. It wasn't explained. It felt like a stunt. And the more you look at it, the more it feels like RTD was deliberately baiting the fandom. The lost spin-offs. Where's Uent? Where's the rumored Sea Devils series? Where's the war between the land and the sea? All teased, non-delivered. The silence is deafening. And fans know what silence means: deals collapsed, budget slashed, plans scrapped. The ratings collapse. Hardcore fans will defend Doctor Who until the end of time, but numbers don't lie. When your audience starts slipping below soap operas, you can't spin that as success. The result, every week, the fandom feels less like a celebration and more like a funeral. Here's where we get into dangerous territory. Because when you start piecing this together, it doesn't look like Russell is failing. It looks like Russell is choosing. Think about it, he's not fighting the backlash. He's not explaining himself. He's not clarifying the regeneration twist or promising the spin-offs are still alive. Instead, he's laughing. He's posting one-word teasers like "behave!" He's leaning into the chaos. So maybe this isn't incompetence. Maybe this is intentional. Maybe he's building a final narrative where Doctor Who collapses under its own weight and he gets to say, "See, I told you only I could save it. I told you it couldn't last without me." It's narcissistic. It's chilling. But it fits. There's a theory whispered among fans, the kind of theory nobody at the BBC would ever admit out loud. It goes like this: Russell T Davies doesn't want to save Doctor Who. He wants to end it on his terms. Why? Because Doctor Who has always been too big to kill. Every time it falters, someone else swoops in and revives it. The Wilderness years ended with RTD's 2005 revival. The Capaldi slump was followed by Jodie Whittaker's radical shift. Even when it stumbled, it lived. But what if Russell's goal is to create the kind of ending that can't be undone? What if his legacy is making sure that when Doctor Who dies, it stays dead? Here's what I want to ask you directly. Would you rather Doctor Who go on forever, even if it becomes unrecognizable? Or would you rather it die now under Russell T Davies with a definitive ending that locks the tomb forever? Because make no mistake, those are the two paths ahead. Either limp endlessly or die dramatically. And whichever path is chosen, RTD is standing at the crossroads holding the keys. And that brings us to the darkest part of all, the legacy trap. Because when history looks back, it won't matter what Russell intended. It won't matter whether Disney meddled or fans revolted. The headline will always read the same Doctor who lived and died under Russell T Davies. The man who saved the show and the man who killed it. If you've made it this far, you already know the cracks in the farce aid. But here's where it gets terrifying: those cracks aren't being fixed, they're spreading. And at the center of them sits the BBC, a corporation bleeding money, clinging to Doctor Who as both lifeline and liability. You won't see a press release. You won't hear an official statement. That's not how corporate divorces work. What you will notice is the silence: no promotional push, no new international tie-ins, no confirmation of spin-offs. Whispers inside the industry suggest Disney has already shifted its priorities. Star Wars is in crisis. Marvel is collapsing under its own spin-offs. They don't need another franchise bleeding out. And so the whispers say Disney is quietly backing away. Contracts fulfilled, obligations met, but no future commitments. Doctor Who might still exist on Disney for a while, but the pipeline of money and promotion that Russell was promised, already drying up. And if that's true, the BBC has a bigger problem than it's ever admitted. It can't afford Doctor Who without outside backing. Doctor Who isn't just a show, it's a money pit. Expensive effects, overseas shoots, actor salaries that balloon with every headline. Without Disney's investment, the BBC faces an impossible choice: scale back to classic Who levels with cardboard sets and tiny budgets. Cancel it outright, saving resources for safer projects. Neither option looks like global television dominance. Both look like retreat, and Russell knows this. That's why every move he makes now feels like theater. The Billie Piper regeneration twist, the dangling promises of spin-offs, the constant teasers on Instagram. It's not storytelling, it's distraction. Because when the money runs out and the cameras stop rolling, all that will be left is the memory of how it ended. Here's where the forbidden knowledge kicks in. Some fans believe Russell already has the last Doctor Who script in his back pocket. A final episode that he'll pull out when the BBC says that's it. No more, and the rumor goes like this: it won't just kill off the Doctor. It won't just close the TARDIS doors. It will rewrite the mythos in such a way that no future writer can undo it. Think about the regeneration twist. Think about Beak Generation. Think about the timeless child. Every law-breaking decision Russell has made. What if it's all leading to a point where the Doctor's story simply can't continue? Not without contradiction. not without collapse. The ultimate poison pill. A narrative ending disguised as canon expansion. And when that happens, history won't call it a cancellation. It will call it Russell T Davies' masterplan. This is the part people underestimate. Doctor Who has survived bad stories, bad doctors, bad ratings. What it has never survived is fan disillusionment. Look at the landscape right now, splintered communities. Some cling to Ncuti, some demand Billy. Others insist the last, real Doctor was Capaldi. Lost faith? Even long-time defenders are starting to ask if it's worth following anymore. Silence at the top. The BBC offers nothing but vague, stay tuned. Russell posts cryptic teases instead of clarity. It feels less like a fandom rallying behind a struggling show and more like mourners arguing at a wake. And here's the paradox: Russell T Davies will be remembered as the man who saved Doctor Who in 2005. That part of his legacy is untouchable. But equally, if the whispers are true, if Disney walks away, if the BBC pulls the plug, then his legacy will also be this: the man who killed Doctor Who in 2025. Two extremes, two headlines, one name at the center, and maybe that's exactly how he wants it, because in the end, every empire falls, every story ends, and Russell T Davies will have the rare distinction of being the man who wrote both the resurrection and the obituary of Doctor Who. So here's what I want to ask you directly. Before we move into the final breakdown in page 4a, do you think Doctor Who can survive another reinvention, another revival, another reset? Or do you believe Russell's endgame is real and that when the lights go out this time, they go out forever? Because history is being written right now and the fandom is part of it.